You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today, just me. So we're doing some of these solo podcasts in our series in the summer here, in the fall, and I just wanted to let you know that we're going to continue to do some more of these and give us some feedback and some constructive criticism or ideas or topics you might want to see or hear. And so today we're going to talk about I'm going to talk about my journey a little bit, but it's funny because when I first started making that switch from, stock market, assets under management, this is my profession, and trying to show people traditional financial planning to becoming your own banker and cash flowing assets and other people's money, other people's time for freedom. When I made that shift, all these things started happening. And so I shared my story all the time. And then I kind of felt like, well, all I'm doing is sharing my story about like the things that I've done with infinite banking and cash flowing assets. And so I wanted to like show other people's stories and success and what they've done with infinite banking and cash flowing assets. And we have some of those coming. We have some great ones coming. But I wanted to go back to just the story a little bit of how we learn these things or how these things are exposed to us, but then society and the noise out there and mainstream, whatever, tells you, don't do it like that. No. I mean, that's risky. Most businesses, all those things, most businesses fail, blah, 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 blah. So, when you grow up and you have no money, right? And you're told that you have scarcity. Hey, I'm hungry, drink some water. You go to bed hungry. When you have two minimum wage earners as parents, a trash truck driver and a factory worker in a small casket factory, right? Those are what my adopted parents did. So we never had money and we never went out to dinner and things like that. I mean, I remember in high school, we got to go to Sizzler for steak dinner around the football playoffs. And I thought Sizzler was like the best restaurant in the world. I mean, I got steak, I got a salad bar, as much as I want. And I just remember I could still taste it. It was so good. And I don't even know if there is Sizzler anymore, but I wouldn't eat there now, probably like Golden Corral. So if you know Golden Corral, I thought that was like the best restaurant ever. So, and I've talked about being homeless and evicted and everything else, but something happened to me when I was 13 years old that made all of those things at least worth it. Maybe, I guess, the rest of my life. Once I learned these things, right? And it was working at the Casket Factory. Okay, so you got to imagine I'm 13, I'm angry, I'm in an abusive household, we don't have any money, we don't have any food. And I start to figure out a couple of years before that, or a year before that delivering papers, I was making money. I mean, I think I've told this story too, but I got my first brand new pair of shoes when I was 13 years old. And they were Nikes. I wouldn't wear Nikes now. I won't go into political reasons, but I wouldn't wear them now. But then I thought they were the most amazing things I ever had on my feet. They were like a Laker. They weren't Laker blue, but they were like, in my mind, they were close to that, right? They were like blue, and they had the Nike symbol was kind of the Laker yellow or gold, whatever the heck that is. And they were like suede. And I walked down the street for the first time, and I thought, everybody's looking at my shoes. I thought the cars driving by were looking at my shoes. That's how proud I was of these brand new shoes. I bought them. My parents didn't buy them. I bought them. So when at 13, going to work in the Casket Factory, I thought, okay, I'm going to work 8 hours, right? I'm going to work 8 hours, 5 days a week. I got to get up at 5, be there at 6, and then work until 3 or whatever it was. And but what it, working there, it did teach me that's not what I want to do the rest of my life, right? I do not want to swing a hammer or be in a factory, sweating like crazy for 8 hours a day for the rest of my life. And I was kind of worried because I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And it's like, I didn't have a choice. I was like, I got to figure something else out because I can't do this. And I didn't want to drive a trash truck, obviously, unless I own the trash company, which I do now. But the lesson that I really learned, so I learned what I didn't want to do, but I also learned by watching the owner of the business. And so I'm just going to tell the story, which some of you have already heard, maybe some of you heard too many times, but I would be working in the Casket Factory. And what I did was, it was hardware. Okay. It wasn't the box the Casket Factory, it was casket hardware. So the handles that attach the box and all the pretty stuff on the casket. Hopefully you've never seen a casket, but I'm going to assume most of us have. But the handles, when they come in, they're raw metal, and you got to bend them. I mean, this is going to hold a body, right? So it's got to be strong. You got to bend this other part of the handle onto where it's going to mount, and it's all raw. So when I'm working on it, there's no finesse to it. You're just pounding this thing. And I learned really quick that my arm wasn't going to hold up for 8 hours. So I learned that I had to be able to hammer with my left hand and my right hand to last 8 hours. And the first day, I think I got a break at like 9 a.m. And the first day, I think I got a 15-minute break. I bet I slept for 14 of those 15 minutes. I was wiped. And I didn't even think I'd get through the first day. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I was starting to get angry about having to work there and just how hard it was. But then I was watching the owner, and his name was Dwayne McIntyre, and his kids and his grandkids and whoever would not even know who I was, or that I would even know his name. But the name of the company was McIntyre Manufacturing. And it started in El Segundo, and then he moved it to Compton, right? And if you know where Inglewood, El Segundo, and Compton are, and this may not be exact, but Inglewood's kind of in the middle. So if you go west, you would go to El Segundo, or you get to El Segundo. And if you go east, you can get to Compton. Okay. By the way, those are two night and day cities from the standpoint of the color of your skin. Because Red Fox used to joke about El Segundo that a black man should not drive through El Segundo, he's going to get arrested. And in Compton, well, Compton's kind of the reverse, maybe, but you're not going to get arrested if you're white. Okay, we're not going to get into that political thing either. But all right, so I start working there, and I'm like, what's going on? So I start watching the owner. Thank God that he made me curious, right? I'm always curious. I'm always watching people. And even back then, that's how I was. And so I started watching. I'm like, the owner, I'm here 8 hours a day. He's only here a couple hours a day. Doesn't he care about this business? Why is he not working as hard as the rest of us? Right? I didn't understand. He didn't have to. He had us. He was paying us. He was paying for our lives, right? Because if your life is measured in time on this earth, right? Then wherever you're spending your time, you're spending your life. He's paying for my life, which makes me a slave, right? Okay, but I was watching, and I didn't know what he was doing in his office. I had no idea. But I did know that I'd rather be the owner. And why? Because he was only working 2 hours a day? No, because he didn't live in Inglewood. He didn't live in El Segundo. He didn't live in Compton or Inglewood, right? I don't know which one's worse, but who knows today? That's been 45 years ago or more. But he lived in Palos Verdes. Now, if you're from Palos Verdes, I'm sure it's not perfect, but if you grew up in Inglewood, you think, what do these people do? What do they know that I don't know? What do they know that everybody that lives down in these crummy houses don't know? Are they just better, smarter? What is it? Luckier? I didn't want it to be any of those answers, by the way, because I wasn't a great student, so I didn't think I was very smart. I know I'm not stupid now, but and I didn't feel lucky, and so I was hoping there was an answer. So I'm working at the Casket Factory doing that, and then one day I'm at a friend's house, and we're like, okay, let's go get a Coke at the liquor store. So the liquor store in LA and California and wherever else is like the convenience store. Okay, we didn't have convenience stores; we had liquor stores. Did they have liquor? Yeah. And so we were going up to get a Coke, and I see this guy pulling weeds in one of the worst houses. And the funny thing about this house is that we thought that the lady that lived there was a witch because she would look out the window. Never saw her outside one time. And again, this is in our little preteen, or I guess teenage brains, which, I won't go there either. But so I see this guy pulling weeds, and I look down, and it's Dwayne McIntyre. And I said, Mr. McIntyre. And I probably didn't say that. I probably said Dwayne because I wasn't very respectful as a kid. I said, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, hey. And he said, Jim, I own this house. And I said, why would you own this house? You live in Palos Verdes. I own houses up there. And he said, I own real estate throughout Los Angeles, Jim. And I was like, wow, okay. And I just couldn't put the puzzle together. I just couldn't put it together. Like, he showed me everything I needed to know. He was the owner. He was using other people's time, other people's money, other people's effort, and he was free. And then he was owning real estate, which was cash flowing all over Los Angeles. How many homes? I have no idea. Does it matter? Paid for his lifestyle in Palos Verdes, those two things, right? And so society, though, school taught me what? Save money, get a good job, let the government control your money. The stock market, the stock market, the stock market. So I learned about that. And I learned about it. I got really good at selling it. I got really good at saying, hey, you should put your money with me because I have these platforms. I got Brinker Capital. I got this. Here's the returns that they've done over the last 3 years, 5 years, since inception, all this other crap that they fill your head with, and then you fill your clients' heads with. And, I was making good money. I had $700 million under management. All I did was make my clients happy and make sure my employees were happy. But I felt like something was missing. I felt like this is not what Dwayne McIntyre was doing, right? And then I realized, and I came to be exposed through Nelson Nash, infinite banking, and whoever controls the money makes the money. And I remember how he said that to me. And I was like, wow, this little guy from Birmingham, Alabama, just opened my mind kind of the same way that Dwayne McIntyre did when I was 13. Now, hopefully I was smarter at 30, whatever, than I was at 13. And I was, because I thought that's the answer. You've seen it before, over and over and over again. So I took this $700 million book of business and I analyzed, this is before Excel, right? I went through files. What does this person do to make their money? Where's my meeting notes? What did I say, right? And I had some people that were in the cable business. That's how long ago this was. Okay, the cable business, which is dead now. But it was kind of like the internet business before the internet. And these guys, if you were in the right place at the right time, you made a lot of money. So I discounted those guys. I discounted the guys that got some big payout or some, windfall, some got lucky, got rid of all the luckies. Okay. And I focused and I said, whoa, wait a minute. There's a pattern. Guess what the pattern was? Own businesses and cash flowing assets. Okay, so in the same time that I'm like realizing this, I meet Nelson Nash and he's like, you got to control the money. And I'm like, well, who controls the money? The bank, the government, through taxation, et cetera. And in Wall Street. because everything in mainstream tells you to save your money and give it to a money babysitter. So now I had Nelson Nash, Dwayne McIntyre, who I hadn't talked to at that point, almost 30 years. Right. And, but I had those two mentors, even though he didn't know he was a mentor of mine, to show me the way. And I started doing this stuff, and I started doing infinite banking. I started buying businesses. I started buying parts of businesses. I started doing all of these things and buying cash flowing assets. And it was like 3 years, 5 years. I was like, oh my gosh, I got a ton of money coming in now from that. And I would do like a PFS, and they'd say, your net worth is, and I'd say, no, it's not that. And they'd say, yeah, look, this is what this is worth. This is what this is worth. And this is how much money you bring in. This is what cash you have. This is cash value in your life insurance, blah, 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 blah. And I'd say, I don't feel like I'm worth that. And then next year, hey, you're worth this. No, come on. It did not go up that much. There's no way. And, and I remember getting my tax bills. And this is what I really got medieval about, like, what was my tax strategy? And so it kept on going up, kept on going up. And after 3 or 5 years, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I wanted to tell everybody what I did. Bought over 30 companies, now over 30 companies using the strategy. And I've sold some of them. Some of them didn't work out. Is that amazing? I didn't bat 1,000. And some of them didn't make money that are still around and kind of sputtering or whatever, right? And then there's some that are doing great. And thank goodness for those. But what I realized is I used to tell my story all the time then, because it was to each individual. It wasn't like online or social media or podcasts or anything, or even videos or courses. But it made me realize that I should tell the story more often, because I have a story, you have a story, I have my demons about money, and you have your money demons, and they're different. Everybody's different. God created us that way, right? So I started doing this, and I started thinking, oh my gosh, I got to tell everybody about this. And I've been on this mission ever since to tell everyone about infinite banking, everyone about the shift in your mindset that you've got to make to become free. Now, what I mean by free, and when I say financial freedom, and everybody's, all you do is talk about money. No, I'm talking about freedom. Money gives you choices. Choices gives you freedom. Freedom allows me to have impact on whatever I care about. Like I could play golf today. I can record a podcast. I could do both maybe. But freedom is what I am advocating for you, your family, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and on and on and on and on. Because the herd will always be the majority. Okay, so why don't people do it? Because they have choices, or they're afraid. They're afraid of failure, fear of success, all these things. All those things are created by noise. And you got to find somebody who knows the truth, and you got to listen to it. You got to make these shifts. And it's why I wrote this book. And this podcast is not to promote the book, but ownership. Camera goes the wrong way. Ownership, how to start owning your life, your personal life. And I tell a story in there of Jack and his wife Shirley and their experience. And it's making these shifts. And once you do, again, once you see the truth, you can't unsee it, right? You can't unsee the truth. So I made these shifts. I've helped other people make these shifts. I want you to make these shifts. The only thing in this podcast that matters is I want to inspire you to take one action today that will help you get closer and closer to freedom. That's it, to freedom. And so I'm going to answer my own questions that I normally ask to people, the two questions I ask people in the podcast. And People always like those. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to come up with one every time I do one of these solo podcasts. Okay. But, when I ask people what's the best advice anybody ever gave me or you, when I asked it. And the advice I'm going to share today is read for 1 hour a day. Now, this is a funny story because, again, this is in Mission, Kansas, Old Mission, I think is what they call it. There was a McDonald's there. I was having coffee and probably breakfast with a guy that cleaned the Gold's Gym that I ran. So he's the janitor. And the janitor gave me some of the best advice I've ever heard. And he said, Jim, how often do you read? I said, no, I'm kind of embarrassed to say, I'm not sure I've ever read a book from cover to cover. Didn't really have to do that in high school or school. I mean, maybe Jonathan Livingston Seagull, maybe Of Mice and Men, but nothing like big. Every time I would see a book that was like 700 pages, I mean, I wouldn't even start it. I'd just BS my way through or get a D or an F, and I didn't care. But he said, you got to read every day for an hour a day, because if you read for an hour a day on any subject, in 6 weeks, you'll be an expert. Now, I didn't feel like I was an expert in anything, and I didn't really feel confident about anything. I felt like my net worth was low. I was just this gym monkey, blah, 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 blah. I did not have the confidence that I had later in my 20s, or this could have been in my teens. I think I was maybe 19 or 20. And so he said, read an hour a day, and in 6 weeks, you'll be an expert on that. And is that true? I have no idea. But if you read an hour a day on a subject for 6 weeks straight, you will gain knowledge. Now, knowledge does not equal understanding. Understanding is when you know how to go implement that knowledge, right? Because then you really understand it. Okay, so then the book, I've said it before, I just said it, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And the reason is Jonathan Livingston Seagull didn't want to be what he wanted to be. He wanted to do tricks. He wanted to do all these other things. And his mainstream society told him, you can't do that. Don't do that. I mean, you're really stupid. You're not, I mean, they ridiculed him, right? But he did it anyway. So that gave me permission to be that being a rebel, being like not accepting my circumstances wasn't a bad thing. I was doing it in a bad way, but it wasn't a bad thing. I just had to learn how to do it in a positive way. So that book, and I'd have to read about Richard Bach, and he's graduated from this world, but he wrote a subsequent book called Illusions, and I think it's called like The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And I'm going to wrap this up with this story. Is in this story, or in this book, there's a handwritten story in the beginning of the book. I love that style. It's such a cool thing for him to do. I wish he was around for me to ask him about that. But he tells this story, and it's about these creatures. And these little creatures, they cling to roots and rocks in this crystal stream, right? And this crystal stream brings them everything that they need. It brings them their nutrition. It brings them everything. They live in communities. And there's this one little creature, and he says, I wonder what would happen if I let go. Because all they have to do is cling. As long as they cling to those rocks and those roots, the stream will take care of them. And he says, I wonder what would happen if I just let go. And all the other creatures laughed at him. They laughed at him. They ridiculed him. You're so stupid. If you let go, that stream that you worship, that you think is going to be some great thing, it's going to beat you, batter you. Surely you're going to die. You're going to get battered against the rocks. Look at that stream out there. Look how fast it's going. And the little creature says, if I just stay here and cling, surely I'm going to die of boredom. And he lets go. And they were right. It beat him. It battered him. But they were wrong about one thing. It didn't kill him. It did beat and batter him, though. Just like owning your own business will do, okay? But sooner or later, he rose up on the stream, and he rode the stream down this beautiful crystal stream, right? He rode the wave, is what I'm trying to say. And as he rode down there, and he's just flying, and he's like, oh my gosh, if I would have known this, I would have let go so long ago. Okay, so eventually he comes by another village of creatures just like him. They look and they see him, and they say, Messiah, Messiah, come to save us. A creature that looks like us, yet he flies. And that's the end of the story. Maybe it's the end of the story. It's the end of my remembering the story. And what does that say? We do the same thing. We watch TV, and it's Kim Kardashian or Jeff Bezos or whoever's making all of this money, either on social media or businesses or whatever it is these days. And we say, oh my gosh, I worship that person. I admire that person. You know nothing about them, right? But society worships them. Those little villages that we live in, clinging to rocks and roots, not me, but they worship them. And they think that they're so different than us. And they're not. All they did was let go. All they did was stop accepting what somebody else tells you are. You're not a seagull, right? You're not a pigeon. You're not a cow. You're not in the herd. You're not a sheep, right? Maybe we're like Jesus's flock, but you're capable of being that creature that lets go and doesn't care that everybody ridicules you, because you know that you'll come through. In this podcast, in Create Tailwind, in this book, Owner Shift, and my first book, Make Bank Without the Bank, they're all there to just give you a little bit more confidence, a little bit more maybe relatable stories for you to say, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to let go. So take that one action, let go today. And we're going to wrap this up like we always do with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale and The Strangest Secret. So take it away, Earl.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Thanks for listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If you want to start increasing your wealth building ability right now, go to community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free, in-depth training designed to help you build real, lasting wealth. See you next week.